In my previous life, I never would have imagined that the best friend I risked my life to protect would push me into a horde of zombies. It wasn't until after I died that I learned the world I lived in was nothing more than an apocalyptic novel, and my best friend was a chosen time-traveling girl who knew the plot of the book and had the blessing of a system. She approached me with great deliberation, all to steal the protagonist's opportunities that rightfully belonged to me. Once I had outlived my usefulness, she pushed me into the zombie horde without warning. She clung to success over my life and the lives of my teammates. With the spatial bracelet I gave her and the heartthrob system, she charmed one man after another and thrived in the apocalypse. In this new life, my teammates and I enjoy a delicious butter hot pot while watching the time-traveling girl kneel on the ground, starving, and beg me for a bite to eat. I pick up a piece of steaming tripe, smile at her, and say, "You want some? Keep dreaming. In this life, I'll make sure she wishes she were dead." When I opened my eyes again, I had returned to a month before the apocalypse, right when the time-traveling girl asked me for the spatial bracelet. "Isabella, the bracelet on your wrist is so beautiful. Can you give it to me as a birthday gift?" Seeing that I didn't respond, she nervously waved her uninjured hand and said, "If this bracelet means a lot to you, it's okay to give me something else." Then she lowered her head with a sad expression. "It's already great that you'd give me a gift. I'm sorry, I shouldn't be so pushy. I've just never had anyone give me a birthday gift since I was a child. I got too excited when you said you'd give me one." As this familiar scene played out again, I finally believed that I had truly been reborn. I bought this bracelet in an ancient street in my previous life, although it wasn't expensive. I liked it so much that I always wore it. In my previous life, seeing Amelia's concern for my injured left hand and her pitiful look, even though I was reluctant, I gave her the bracelet as a birthday gift. It wasn't until after I died that I learned it was all part of Amelia's scheme. Even our first meeting was a carefully crafted deception designed just for me. I first met Amelia during the winter vacation of my freshman year. I was alone, buying food on the street. Suddenly, a man in his 20s grabbed me without explanation and tried to stuff me into a white van. He shouted, "Baby, let's go home, stop making a scene." Despite my desperate struggles and pleas for passersby to call the police, no one did. People assumed we were just a couple arguing, and many were afraid of getting involved. I wanted to break the phones or valuables of the passersby to force them to call the police. But from the moment the incident started, people stayed away, and I had no chance. Just as I was about to be pulled into the van, Amelia appeared. She shouted at the man, "I've already called the police, let her go." Then she helped me break free, and the man fled in the van. After reporting the incident to the police, we discovered that we attended the same university. That's how we got to know each other and became inseparable best friends. It wasn't until after I died that I learned the man who abducted me was hired by her. Everything was just a play to get close to me. Even the injury to my left hand today was part of her elaborate plan. She hired a group of thugs to stop me, then saved me and got herself injured to make me feel guilty and finally obtain my spatial bracelet. She really went to a lot of trouble. The more I thought about it, the angrier I got. I lifted Amelia's chin and slapped her hard. "Amelia, you really are pushy. You stole my boyfriend and still have the nerve to ask me for a birthday gift." After that, I turned and left the hospital room, leaving her stunned. Too, my boyfriend, Wesley, and I were classmates in high school. I had a crush on him back then but never had the courage to confess. He was a popular figure in school, wealthy, powerful, and excellent at studying. To my surprise, Wesley confessed his feelings to me right after the college entrance examination. We got together naturally and applied to the same university. I thought we would be happy together forever, but not long after the apocalypse broke out in my previous life, Wesley broke up with me, citing a difference in values. I couldn't understand why we broke up. We seemed so compatible and had never argued once. It wasn't until after I died that I learned he had cheated on me and gotten together with Amelia long before the apocalypse. Because I didn't show much sadness, Amelia asked me several times if I was really okay. Looking back now, everything makes sense. I was just too naive before. How could I not be heartbroken after breaking up with the person I loved? But in the harsh environment of the apocalypse, I could only suppress my sadness and focus on survival. I wasn't worried about falling out with Amelia. After all, she needed me, not the other way around. Without her, I could work more freely without having to hide anything. On the way back, I called Wesley and cursed him and his entire family. Amelia was no good, and Wesley was a womanizer. As soon as I got back to my rental apartment, Amelia called. Seeing the long voice messages she sent on WeChat, I blocked her without a second thought. My current task was to stock up on supplies. I didn't have time to watch her act. I went to the kitchen, grabbed a knife, pricked my finger, and dripped blood onto the bracelet. Then the bracelet disappeared, and a red mole appeared on the inside of my left wrist. Strange, in my previous life, the bracelet didn't disappear when Amelia wore it. Before I could figure it out, everything went black. And I found myself in another space. I was shocked to see an 88-story building and an endless expanse of black land beneath my feet, roughly estimating. The space was about the size of 10 football fields. I expected it to be big, but not this big. No wonder Amelia was willing to break her hand to get this bracelet. There was even an elevator in the building, but each floor was empty, with no rooms, however. This made it convenient for storing supplies. I mentally willed myself to leave. And sure enough, I was back in the living room the next second. Then I conducted various experiments and confirmed that time inside the building in the space was frozen, while time outside the building passed, and it was suitable for planting. Moreover, 1 hour inside the space was equivalent to 1 minute outside. However, I could only stay in the space for 2 hours a day. If I exceeded that time, I would be automatically ejected. I wondered if the time limit would increase in the future. After confirming the details of the space, I rushed to the nearest breakfast shop. I ordered 2 bamboo steamers of xiaolongbao, 2 jianbingguizi, and 2 cups of iced soy milk. Then I sat on the curb, wolfing down the food while crying silently. This stunned both the shop owner and the passers-by. I couldn't help it. After living through 5 years of the apocalypse, I hadn't tasted such delicious food in a long time. After eating my fill, seeing that there were still 2 days left of the winter vacation, I found some photos of car accidents and medical certificates online, edited them, and used them to ask my counselor for a 1-month leave of absence, claiming I had been in a car accident. I called my childhood friend, Erin, who was working at a company, and immediately took a taxi to her workplace. I asked her to meet me at the coffee shop downstairs in an hour, saying I had something important to tell her. To avoid being overheard, I didn't mention the zombie outbreak on the phone. In my previous life, Erin died fighting off a horde of zombies to cover the team's retreat. In this life, it was my turn to protect her. An hour later, I saw Erin at the coffee shop. As soon as I saw her, I hugged her tightly and wouldn't let go. It was so good that none of the terrible things had happened yet. Erin was a bit confused but let me hug her. "Why are you crying? Who bullied you?" After composing myself and making sure no one was around, I briefly told her about the upcoming zombie outbreak. Seeing her skeptical, I waved my hand in front of her, and the coffee on the table disappeared. With another wave, it reappeared. Erin was stunned for a moment, then whispered urgently, "What are we waiting for? Let's start stocking up on supplies." Then she quickly quit her job, even leaving behind half a month's salary. Both Erin and I grew up in an orphanage. Without parents or many attachments, it was easier for us to act, but we also didn't have much money. I only had 20,000 yuan, and Erin had 60,000 yuan. This wasn't enough to stock up on many supplies, so we decided to take out loans. We took out every loan we could find online, except for nude loans. After all, the apocalypse was coming in a month. When the time came, if we couldn't even save our lives, who would remember these loans? We each borrowed 5 million yuan, then rented a 3-bedroom, 1 living room apartment on a high floor in the suburbs. We also rented 2 large warehouses nearby as temporary storage points. Early the next morning, we divided our tasks. I would buy food, and Erin would buy daily necessities. Then we set off in different directions to start stockpiling. Fully armed, I went to the largest wholesale market in City A. I bought 2,000 barrels of tap water, 15,000 kilograms of rice, 100 kilograms each of sweet potatoes, corn, taro, and potatoes, 100 packs each of frozen dumplings and tangyuan, 200 packs of luosafen, 100 packs of spicy chicken noodles, and 300 packs of various hot pot bases and seasonings, 50 kilograms each of strawberries, apples, bananas, pears, kiwis, oranges, tangerines, sugarcane, pomegranates, and mulberries, 10 boxes of instant noodles in various flavors, 200 boxes each of pure milk and yogurt, 50 boxes of high-proof liquor, 50 boxes of beer, and 20 boxes of various beverages, 50 kilograms each of dried noodles, egg noodles, sweet potato vermicelli, and bean thread noodles, 300 barrels each of peanut oil and rapeseed oil, 100 barrels each of sesame oil and salad oil, 100 packs each of seeds for millet, wheat, corn, sorghum, soybeans, highland barley, buckwheat, bok choy, romaine lettuce, Chinese cabbage, Shanghai green, sweet potatoes, and corn. Also, 100 saplings each of easy-to-grow fruit trees, 100 kilograms each of raw beef tripe, chicken, duck, pork, marinated chicken wings, chicken feet, duck wings, duck feet, pig trotters, beef, and duck necks, 100 each of roasted ducks, barbecued ducks, and roasted chickens, 100 bags each of various frozen skewers, including beef cubes, chicken cartilage, large squid, and duck intestines. Nuts were expensive, so I only bought 50 kilograms each of pistachios, pecans, macadamia nuts, and pine nuts, which Aaron and I both loved, and 10 kilograms of various snacks. I had all these items delivered to the warehouse we rented the previous night and planned to transfer them to the space when no one was around at night, for, just as I was about to move on after buying these supplies, I saw a familiar figure. It was Amelia. Her left hand was in a cast and wrapped in bandages, and she was holding Wesley's hand affectionately while talking to the shopkeepers. Apparently, they were also stockpiling supplies. I followed them around until they finally drove to their storage location. As soon as Amelia got out of the car, she saw the large warehouse being filled by workers bit by bit. She happily stood on tiptoe and kissed Wesley on the cheek. "Baby, I don't know how to repay you for supporting me in opening this supermarket." Then Wesley put his arm around Amelia's slender waist, and his lips almost touched her ear as he whispered something. "Stop it, you're so bad," Amelia said coquettishly, pushing him away, even though I knew they had been together for a long time. Seeing the scene still hurt, out of sight, out of mind. After memorizing the location of their warehouse, I asked the driver to take me to the food street. I bought 100 servings each of fried chicken tips, fried dough sticks, fried dough balls, iced soy milk, xylongbeo, stinky tofu, luosafen, grilled chicken wings, fried noodles, beef offal, skewers, and sweet herbal jelly. Then I found a secluded place and stored them all in the space. These foods tasted best when freshly cooked. As soon as I got back to Aaron's rental apartment, I collapsed on the sofa. In my previous life, this body didn't get much exercise, and a whole day of running around exhausted me. After resting for a while, I called 2 affordable and delicious small restaurants in City A and ordered 100 servings each of sweet and sour spare ribs, braised prawns in oil, twice-cooked pork slices, spicy crayfish, spicy chicken, boiled fish with blood curd, squirrel-shaped mandarin fish, steamed sea bass, braised pork knuckle, braised prawns in oil, pork belly with preserved vegetables, and spare rib and corn soup, asking for delivery. These dishes wouldn't be easy to get in the apocalypse, so it was better to stock up on them. Then I ordered 200 family buckets from KFC and 200 cups each of our favorite milk tea and coffee. After that, I called a ranch and bought 100 each of chicks, lambs, calves, ducklings, goslings, and piglets, asking them to be delivered to a grassy area in the suburbs, since there were no surveillance cameras there. I planned to put all the young animals into the space when no one was around. After buying all these things, I only had 10,000 yuan left. Tomorrow, I would rent an excavator to dig a river in the space and buy some fish and shrimp fry, and then I would be completely out of money. As soon as Erin opened the door, she saw me lying on the sofa. Without a word, she flopped down on the other side of the sofa. I sighed. "We need to exercise. Our physical fitness is too weak." Erin rolled over, covered her face with a pillow, and mumbled, "Okay, I'll buy a treadmill and a punching bag tomorrow." Erin's progress was also going smoothly. The shelves she bought were already in the warehouse. She had also ordered bulletproof windows, special anti-theft doors, solar panels, rainwater filters, water purifiers, and generators, and was just waiting for them to be installed tomorrow. She had prepared everything from quilts, down jackets, windbreakers, cotton boots, rain boots, and gloves, to shower gel, facial cleanser, dish soap, sanitary napkins, and lighters, power banks, kerosene, alcohol lamps, candles, compasses, shovels, gas masks, oxygen masks, goggles, as well as self-defense knives and hammers. However, due to the purchase limits on medicine, we couldn't visit all the pharmacies in one day, so we still needed some more time. Everyone around me, except for myself, has been reborn from an apocalyptic life. Uncle Tom sold his house at a low price to buy food and stock up on supplies, fortifying his home with countless layers. Aunt Lily went on a shopping spree, buying luxury goods and gold, wanting to live it up before the apocalypse. The couple next door, famous for their loving relationship, broke up amidst endless quarrels. The lady upstairs chose to work overtime relentlessly, leading a life more terrifying than the infamous 996 schedule. Practically living a 007 nightmare. Their lives are colorful, but the one thing they share is the pitying look they give me when they see me, shaking their heads as if my days are numbered. Then, on the day the apocalypse was supposed to arrive, all was calm, nothing happened. One, sigh. This was the 43rd person to sigh in front of me. Old Manley glanced at me, shook his head, and carried a bag of rice into his house. The people around me had all been reborn. I only found out about this recently when Aunt One downstairs accidentally let it slip, and I happened to overhear her. She had said, Shaolin, you should go out more when you have free time, enjoy life a bit, we need to be content and happy." I responded to her, and as I was leaving, I heard her muttering to herself, "Poor Shaolin, turned into a zombie at the start of the apocalypse, and there was no saving him. Turned into a zombie at the start, I died before it even began." I was shocked. Aunt One had drawn an SSS card and could retry even if she didn't succeed initially. As for me, I couldn't even make it to the start. Such rotten luck. Just like when I recently tried summoning the wind god and not only failed but also got reset, too. After sulking for a day, I decided to enjoy life and have some fun. Barbecue, fried potatoes, hot pot, bring it all on. I walked home full of joy. Milk tea in one hand and fried chicken in the other, but before I could even enter my house, I heard the couple next door, famously in love, having a huge fight, ending with the girl storming out with her luggage. Before I could intervene, she stood with hands on hips and yelled into the house, "Hayden, spend your life with your mistress. I'm done serving you. Cheating on me serves you right to be thrown into a pile of zombies." Love and hatred displayed vividly in just a few seconds right before my eyes. But now was not the time to enjoy the drama. Another person who drew an SSS card. Another reborn person. I spilled my milk tea. Me. At this moment, I didn't know whether to feel sadder for her being cheated on or for myself not being reborn. Not only do I lack any special abilities, but I'm also doomed to become a zombie. After saying that, she stormed off with her suitcase, not forgetting to dump her trash. As she passed by, she gave me a pitying look and said, "Young lady, let me give you some advice. Fulfill any wishes you have now. You never know what comes first. Tomorrow or an accident. Stop bothering with that scumbag. Lamenting over men will only bring misfortune your whole life. Spending money on men will curse you for 3 lifetimes. I responded, quietly guarding my wallet. She gave me an approving look and a thumbs up. You can be taught. 3. I am Valeria. As the community mediator, I usually help residents resolve disputes, and I'm also an online writer. Lately, I've been encountering people who've been reborn, and it seems my fate is sealed. I pray for a chance to survive. After holing up in my house for 2 days, Aunt Lily and Uncle Tom started arguing, drawing me to the scene as the neighborhood mediator. Upon arrival, I saw Uncle Tom busily moving loads of food into the house. I walked over, ready to make small talk and assess the situation. Seeing me, Uncle Tom paused. Shaolin, life is so unpredictable. Do what you want to do first. What's that saying about tomorrow? Tomorrow and accidents. You never know which comes first. I replied helplessly. Another person who drew an SSS card appeared. Why are there so many people reborn from the apocalypse? It's like poking a hornet's nest of reborn individuals. Yes, that's what I meant. Uncle Tom nodded repeatedly. Aunt Lily, with a gold-ringed finger pointing, instructed me, hurry up and get Uncle Tom to stop. He's shaking the ceiling down. It's non-stop noise. Thinking of a solution, I realized it was impractical to ask Uncle Tom to stop now. Building fortifications is a matter of life and death. Could I really persuade him to stop? Besides, I don't even know when the apocalypse will hit. Uncle Tom, hands on his hips and furious, said, "You know we only have a year. What are you trying to do? You don't want to live and you won't let others live either." Provoked, Aunt Lily threw down her shopping bag. "So you have a reason to disturb the peace every day. It's not the future yet." Aunt Lily is also reborn. How do I solve this? Question. How do you make 2 reborn individuals get along when they've pulled me, a mediator who turned into a zombie right at the start, into their conflict? This is like a level of hell. I chose to answer, "If you can't mediate, just run," waving goodbye to them. I said, "Auntie and Uncle, I think Uncle has a point about the unpredictability of life. I need to take care of important things first. I need to save my own life before the apocalypse and cherish the little time I have left. I can't afford to mess with these 2. How could someone as unlucky as me dare to provoke 2 reborn individuals? What if they get upset and turn on me? Once I accept my own weaknesses, I become invincible. In this situation, I choose to give up. After resigning, I sat at home watching cartoons, only to be woken up at midnight by fireworks outside and footsteps above. I expertly grabbed some earplugs and inserted them into my ears, since more people have been reborn. They either renovate their houses or throw parties in the middle of the night, trying to celebrate before the apocalypse. I've gotten used to this level of noise, but the footsteps grew closer, followed by a faint knock on the door. Peering through the peephole, I saw a woman from upstairs, another person who had returned from the dead. Everyone who's been reborn is just slacking off. No more going to classes, either partying everywhere or frantically fortifying their homes and hoarding supplies. But she was different. She chose to work overtime relentlessly. 996 wasn't enough for her ambitions. She went for 007. And I often heard shower noises from her place at midnight. This ruthless woman, having died once, still wants to drag us into her frenzy. The queen of overachievement marches on. Nothing grows here. I opened the door, ready to ask her what was the matter. Instead of beating around the bush, she walked straight into the room, casually closed the door behind her, and sat down with a natural flair. She opened her file folder and gestured for me to come over. Her movements were succinct and fluid, skipping the pleasantries to save time. True to her reputation as a top student, She didn't want to waste even a second. As I approached, she stared at me with furrowed brows. Let me introduce myself briefly. I'm Molly, 5 years older than you, and your upstairs neighbor, Ms. Moo. I acknowledged, unsure of her intentions. I'm here to propose a collaboration with you. A collaboration? Was she crazy, or was I? I looked at her in utter disbelief. Everyone who was reborn knew I would turn into a zombie at the onset of the apocalypse. She must be aware of it too. Was she seriously considering collaborating with me? When the apocalypse hits, I'd turn her into a zombie right away. Did she want us to become zombies together and hunt others? That couldn't be right. It seemed the brain of the top student was foggy after rebirth. She no longer wanted to be human but a zombie, but maybe that was okay. She was always on the move, always with dark circles under her eyes. Being a zombie might actually be less strenuous than being human. Turning into a zombie might not be such a bad option after all. She really lived up to her reputation. Even in becoming a zombie, she was going all out. I nodded in agreement. If we're going to collaborate, my first bite is reserved for you, ensuring you turn before anyone else. 6. Have you realized that only the people in our complex have been reborn? She asked as she flipped through some documents. Of course, I nodded. Otherwise, with Uncle Tom frantically moving supplies, he would have already emptied the stock of our local supermarket. If others had been reborn too, the world would be in chaos by now. But isn't that the general consensus in our complex? I curiously glanced at her, waiting for her to get to the point. I wanted to watch Lazy Sheep. I wasn't in the mood to chat. I lifted my chin, urging her with my eyes to bravely speak up. There was nothing to fear about wanting to become a zombie. In the future, I would be a zombie, your guide. She gave me a weird look and slowly said, after the apocalypse, I was the only survivor in the complex. After this disaster, only a third of the global population survived. The rest either lacked supplies, turned on each other, or became zombies at the very start, losing their right to live. So I seek a collaboration with me, someone who turns into a zombie right from the start. I wondered if she had lost her mind to even suggest such a thing. She held my hand. They are wrong. You didn't turn into a zombie immediately. We were wandering together outside when you tried to save a child and got bitten by a zombie, sacrificing yourself heroically. I watched helplessly as you gradually turned into a zombie, your complexion growing paler, and your eyes reddening. I covered her mouth with my hand. Stop. If she continued, I would end up vomiting the fried chicken I had just eaten all over her. No holds barred. She nodded, signaling for me to let go of her mouth. Later. Someone brought you into the neighborhood. You were the first one there to turn into a zombie. People assumed you were the first one infected. You were different from the other zombies. Completely natural, you'd eat grass but never bite anyone. I hadn't turned into a zombie at the beginning. There might still be hope for me, but I'd rather eat grass than bite someone. Am I still a zombie? No wonder everyone is so friendly towards me. I covered my face in embarrassment, unable to believe how pathetic I was. Not biting is fine, but eating grass, that's making all zombies look bad. I didn't look like a zombie at all. It was pitiful. Suddenly, Molly changed the subject. After the apocalypse ended, the zombies were gone, but people, who had grown accustomed to violently scavenging for supplies, did they care whether they killed zombies or humans? When such people are in the majority, it could lead to another disaster. So, did everyone just ruin everything in the end? I guess the outcome. I also realized why she had come, to prevent another disaster from happening. Pretty much, she replied. What about collaboration? Since I wasn't one of the first to turn into a zombie, I wanted to survive. Teaming up with someone who knew what the future held seemed like the best strategy. If I was going to seek support, it had better be from the strongest support available. We need to find out why people in the neighborhood were reborn. She handed me some files. Here's some data I've gathered recently that you can look through. What do you want to do? I watched her expression, trying to discern the truth in her words. We need to find the real reason behind this disaster and stop it. Otherwise, even if we survive this apocalypse, another massive disaster will await us. She looked fanatical. A huge challenge ahead, but if we could overcome it, the future would no longer be a living hell. I shivered. This woman's expression was frightening. After she left, I couldn't stop picturing her fanatical demeanor. How could someone who had survived the apocalypse not be changed by it? I was skeptical, but I had no choice but to follow the lead she provided. As I hadn't been reborn and didn't know what the future held, following her plan might lead me to some clues. Obedient on the surface, but secretly investigating, a double agent. I was the embodiment of cleverness and courage. She tasked me with finding Grandpa Lee in our neighborhood to ask about an ancient clock there. I went to Grandpa Lee's house, where he lay on a sun lounger in the courtyard, basking in the sun as he had done for years without his limbs degrading. This was the retirement life I dreamed of. Hearing footsteps, he slowly opened his eyes and saw me, leisurely calling out, "Little Lynn is here. Take a seat, Grandpa." We're planning an activity for the kids in the neighborhood to learn about old objects. I'm gathering information about old clocks. He was momentarily stunned, then got up from his lounger and went inside to fetch a booklet, which he handed to me enthusiastically. That old clock has special significance. It's good to educate the kids. Today's kids are under so much pressure with all their studies. It's time they had some relaxation. The pressure really is intense. Back in our school days, we'd run outside the moment class ended. So happy, I nodded and promised, I'll definitely complete the task, finding joy for them. After the apocalypse ends and the mysteries are unraveled, I will organize an event where children can run freely in the sunlight. No longer living just to survive. I refuse to become that despicable woman who, when her own umbrella is broken, wishes to tear others apart. All right, after the event, just return the booklet to me. I won't see you out, he said, hunched over as he continued to sit in the lounge chair, basking in the sun. I opened the booklet, which read, "The enemy attacked and occupied the temple. Then the old man used the bell to strike them and survived. The old bell saved the life of a wealthy man and thus was venerated, adorned in gold and silver, enjoying luxuries." I couldn't help but feel envious of such treatment, but what does this have to do with the apocalypse? What exactly is Molly's purpose? The origin of the old bell isn't anything special, and I can't find any clues from this angle. I decided to visit the site to see it for myself. When I reached the old bell and inadvertently touched it, it transformed into a beam of light that landed straight on my wrist. Oh no. The old bell has vanished. Then, a tattoo of a bell appeared on my wrist, thankfully sparing me from having to sell myself for the bell. Suddenly, many images flashed through my mind, from the initial fall of a meteorite to the subsequent outbreak of zombies chasing people, who fled in panic, searching everywhere for food, searching for shelters, until the apocalypse was over. People couldn't control their desires and started killing each other. Children cried. Mothers were forced to jump from buildings. Bodies were strewn everywhere. The world turned red. A complete devastation. All of this could have been avoided, because it wasn't a natural disaster, but a man-made one. Yet, what should not have happened, happened in the end. Human desires are never fully satisfied, and it was the meteorite that triggered these desires. Ah, how terrifying it is to be controlled by one's own desires, unlike me, who only shivers in the corner after becoming a zombie. I fell into a deep sleep, and by the time I woke up, the world had already changed, order collapsed. And there was no clarity in people's eyes. Even after the apocalypse ended, human nature is fickle. In the end, it's you kill, I kill, everyone kills. It all completely fell apart, and I trembled amidst it all. The old bell found me and sent me back to the past to prevent everything from happening. The bell and I made a pact. I sent the meteorite back to outer space, and it entrusted its life and death to me, also taking a gamble on whether I was worth trusting. I am Valeria, of course. Worth trusting. However, a mishap occurred along the way, and except for me, everyone in the neighborhood was reborn. Looking at my wrist, the tattoo of the old bell was extremely bright. The golden finger arrived. Although late, I stood with my hands on my hips, laughing brilliantly. Who would have thought that the one initially seen as pitiful would transform into the savior now? Allow me a moment of joy first. After my joyful moment, I hurriedly drove to X City, where the meteorite landed. Was the origin of all disasters. It was also the future refuge, where people turned on each other. My task this time was to return the meteorite to its original location. On the way to City X, I thought of Molly. Most of what she said was right, but she concealed a critical point. The meteorite didn't actually kill people, it just plunged their consciousness into a deep slumber. Those who were bitten by zombies and those who initially turned into zombies could also revert back to being human. Except for those who were killed by others, they got no second chance. The appearance of the meteorite wasn't meant to destroy the world. It was a test of the goodness or evil in people's hearts, and the people of the past failed this test. So, this time, we opted out. If we can't pass, then why bother taking the test at all? Yet, she never mentioned a word about this. It would be interesting. Had she promoted this idea from the shadows right from the beginning? Even if a disaster occurred, it wouldn't have escalated to a catastrophic level like in the past. There would still be room to maneuver, but instead, she chose to approach me right from the start. She really was a master at hiding her true feelings, speaking half-truths. If I hadn't accessed the memories, I might have been deceived too. Indeed, my initial suspicions were confirmed. Those who survived the apocalypse were already assimilated. But why was she so sure about my connection with old clock, even though she had complete memories? Soon, I got the answer. The old clock pattern on my wrist started ticking, sending me Morse code. Perhaps, the world's rebirth had exhausted all its energy, and now it could only feebly communicate with me. Ah, life is tough. Decoding this was a test of my intelligence, but I wouldn't just give in to it. Oh no. Eventually, after a long struggle, I managed to decode it. Luckily, it was brief, otherwise. My reputation as a savior would be at risk. Molly, meteorite, agreement. It looked like Molly had made an agreement with the meteorite, which is why she was reborn too. So, I wasn't the only one. She also received special attention, but why could she return to the past with her full memory intact, while I had to find the original form of old clock to gain mine? This disparity made me exclaim, TSK TSK. Old clock, you're not cutting it. The clock flashed a few times, the ticking sound growing louder, not caring about energy consumption, as if trying to deafen me. I pulled out a power stone, which contained energy. The clock stopped instantly. Gotcha, holding your lifeline. Still think you can rebel? After absorbing the energy, the clock turned into a screen under my control. It even allowed typing. This time, it quickly revealed how to send the meteorite back to outer space. First, I had to get the control key for the meteorite from Molly. And with the function of old clock itself, I could then send the meteorite back to outer space. Another task to do. Sigh. Life is tough. Treasure every moment. After arriving in City X, I saw a tent where the meteorite had landed. Molly was sitting there waiting for me. Inside the tent, there were many snacks and a blanket. I couldn't help but marvel at how comfortably she was living. Seeing me approach, she remained unflustered, watching me calmly. Are we cooperating this time? Why not? I chose not to directly expose her motives. If the enemy doesn't move, I won't move. This comes from the 24 strategies I just reviewed. We waited together for the apocalypse to arrive, after the end times, when heroes vie for supremacy. We would share the power. What do you think? Her words were straightforward, revealing everything without fear that I might eliminate her. It turned out that the agreement she made with the meteorite was to destroy Ancient Bell. After all, as long as Ancient Bell wasn't destroyed, there would be hidden dangers. The moment I got the key, Ancient Bell could send the meteorite back to outer space anytime. Despite her daily attempts at being a 007, trying various methods, she still failed. Therefore, she had no choice but to turn to me and choose to collaborate. She didn't know my background, just as I didn't know her true intentions, so the initial flattery was just to make me lower my guard. Are you crazy? You'd rather keep a meteorite and let it destroy the world instead of sending it back to space? I couldn't understand her decision. If it's all for power, can't we achieve that in the current world? Must we reorganize and let the world pay a terrible price? What's wrong with the meteorite? It merely amplifies the deepest desires of people. Besides, it doesn't kill them outright, it just puts them to sleep for a while. Just agree with me, and when they fight amongst themselves, we can profit from their dispute. Her tone carried a hint of seduction, urging me to make a decision, to make the same choice as her, to submit to the meteorite, to submit to the supreme power. But who am I? I am Sakura Yuahan Ling Valeria. How could I be tempted by these things? I choose to refuse. The meteorite indeed didn't kill people, but it made their bodies very frail. It inherently caused great harm. So, I made my choice. This collaboration is over. Unable to persuade her for the time being, I chose to leave. She called out to me, Valeria, you were born under the sun, naturally seeing everything as pure. But what about me? I've been struggling since graduation. I simply don't want to return to my small village. So I must relentlessly scramble, no matter how hard I fight, exhausting my youth. I still can't take root here, she said, tears flowing. I just want to be like you all. Who doesn't want to stroll around after work, to play everywhere? I want that too, but I can't. I need to settle down, but it's too difficult. If the apocalypse makes your life worse than before, what sense does all this make? Can it really improve your life? Why not? It can balance my psyche. They keep raising prices. Then insincerely increase the wages just a little. What's that salary good for? I should even be thankful to them, because without them, I wouldn't even have a job, so I have to be grateful. Her smile was tinged with bitterness. You know, the happiest time for me was just when the apocalypse broke out. Everyone was equal, surviving just for the sake of survival, no matter how glamorous people looked on regular days. No matter how much they bullied others, everyone was brought low. Molly laughed wildly, hands on her hips. That's how it should be. Why should people be born into different social classes, some inheriting fortunes at birth, while others die unclaimed? They are so arrogant, utterly indifferent to us, as if we are like wildfire, unquenchable, just like the wild grass that springs back to life with the breeze of spring, providing them with endless wealth. So you have to promise me, let's destroy the old clock. Okay. Give everyone an equal opportunity to start over and reshape the world, Molly pleaded with me, gripping my wrist tightly with one hand and fervently rubbing the pattern of the old clock with the other, her nails almost digging into my flesh. It really hurt. This woman was ruthless. I shook off her hand and tied her up with the rope I had prepared. I reject your request. Is this really giving everyone a chance to reshape? You're taking away the hope of survival from those who are physically weak. If you let the meteor fall this time, you will also be one of those destroying their lives. She stared at me blankly, then struggled violently, like a madwoman, constantly saying, let me go, let me go. I just want to let the events of the past continue. Is that wrong? Can't we just let nature take its course? I looked at her, my gaze growing colder. Her ideas were extremely paranoid. To reshape the world. She was willing to doom everyone, but isn't the world always reshaping? It's just that the changes are not very significant. I want to save the world. She wants to destroy it. Back and forth. It amounts to nothing. No. I need to get the key quickly. The meteor is falling tomorrow, and it will slowly affect the world until the zombie outbreak a year later. So I laid out the facts. Of course not. Have you ever thought, even if the apocalypse comes, those people will still enjoy their original treatments? Your dream of equality for all is just a dream. Impossible. You're lying to me. You're just trying to trick me into giving up the key. I won't be fooled. Her laugh was sinister, making me frown. She lay flat. Heh, woman, you just want the key, right? Search for it yourself. With that posture, could I really find it? Unlikely. I chose to continue persuading her. A joke. How could I? Valeria Sakurayoki Hanling. Not persuade her. I needed to make her wholeheartedly convinced. First, I would shatter her beliefs, and second, I would change her views. Completely persuading her, then I activated the old clock, which immediately displayed a series of images. After the apocalypse, the former richest men of City A and some well-known tycoons were heavily protected, living even more extravagantly than before the apocalypse, even more openly. Since legal restrictions no longer applied, she immediately looked at me with tearful eyes, filled with disbelief. How could her steadfast beliefs be wrong? They couldn't be wrong. It wasn't possible. Molly shook her head frantically, her head almost blurring into an afterimage. My gaze followed her movements. After a long time, she finally stopped. My head spun dizzyingly as she collapsed onto the carpet. The first tactic had worked, shattering her beliefs. But at what cost? It was all so harmful to each other. After resting for a while, our conversation continued. Even if what you believe is right, what about you? You and they are no different in the end. It's just the pot calling the kettle black. You survived, but not without taking lives yourself. The once dragon-slaying girl had turned into a dragon herself. I spoke with righteous indignation, trying to make her reflect on her own actions. She scoffed. How could I be like those degenerates? They are demons. While I am the embodiment of justice, I disdain the act of killing. Once someone takes a life, they can't be reborn. Anyone who has even a trace of blood on their hands is corrupted in thought. No killings, not assimilated by the apocalypse. Could my guess, Valeria Sakurayoki Hanaling, have been wrong? That shouldn't be. I untied her, watching her cautiously. She simply lay down on the ground. I give up on my previous decision. You probably can't accomplish what you intended. What do you plan to do next? Molly quickly regained her composure, true to her reputation as a long-standing champion of resilience. As soon as her beliefs crumbled, she bounced back, quickly finding the best possible solution. She slammed her hand on the table. Since the world can't be restructured, I'm done playing spy. Let whoever wants to live that life go ahead. Pointing to the dark circles under her eyes, she complained to me. Look at these. I apply foundation for ages every day, and sometimes it still doesn't cover them. Molly's voice trembled. Waking up early every day, working overtime without extra pay. They are worse than the most notorious exploiters. I tentatively spoke. If I said I could solve your problem, would you give me the key? You'd be doing me a favor. Her smile returned. As long as you can stop everyone from being exploited, I'll give it to you right away. Stopping the capitalists from exploiting others, isn't that against their very nature? I gave a sheepish smile, inwardly calling out to the watch countless times, but it remained silent. I pretended to throw away the weight stone, threatening it, and it finally spoke, albeit weakly. I have a solution. Problem solved. Excellent. I nodded at Molly. I accept your terms. She clapped her hands, efficiently tossing the key to me as if it were a hot potato. The key was now successfully in my hands. Truly, I am the chosen one. Splendid. I gave myself a thumbs up. I took the key, observing it closely. It was silver, dazzlingly so, and under the moonlight, it seemed to be enveloped in a layer of mystery, utterly alluring. Seeing the deal concluded, Molly sat cross-legged, relaxed and carefree as if a weight had been lifted off her shoulders. She poured herself a drink and began sipping it. In no time, her cheeks were flushed. With the alcohol loosening her tongue, she became more talkative. Actually, I was hesitant at first about handing over the key. The apocalypse was so brutal, with the stench of blood everywhere. The only thing that attracted me was its potential to restructure the world. I deliberately ignored the disasters involved. Children and the elderly are vulnerable, always at risk of being abandoned. I thought those at the top could be brought down, and those below could climb up. It wasn't just about birthright. The diligent could reap rewards. But all that turned out to be false. There's nothing left to cling to. I took the wineglass from her hand, and she looked at me in surprise. There's a form of heroism in recognizing the harsh realities of life yet still cherishing it. After all, we only live for a few decades. We might as well embrace it as it comes. People long for different things. Some aspire for a simple life, while others seek power and high status. Most of the time, Many of the things we end up with aren't what we truly wanted. We're just swept along by circumstances. When we are part of society, facing its complex challenges, it's crucial to understand our own needs. I crave sugar because I want it, not because everyone else has it and that makes me want it too. I'm surprised I could utter such philosophical words. Awesome. Molly seemed thoughtful. The night deepened, and I picked up my blanket, ready to go straight to sleep, without any hesitation. She grabbed the blanket and covered her head. I decided not to argue with someone who was clearly distressed. Throughout the night, I occasionally heard sobbing. The next day, her eyes were red and swollen. I made some ice packs for her to reduce the swelling. She couldn't help but start crying again. Oh, such an easily moved girl. How did I ever think she would be corrupted by the apocalypse? 007 is really merciless, driving such a fine girl to madness. The meteorite arrived as expected. She took the key, and I released the old clock. With one final flash, the old clock took the meteorite back to outer space. It once saved a wealthy man's life, and now it has returned the meteorite to outer space, saving the world. It's over. Everything is over. Apocalypse and hell on earth are gone. I felt a silent gratitude, and Molly smiled too. It's gone home. What? I looked at her, puzzled. Never mind. Let's head back. With our task completed, it was time to set sail for home. We returned to our neighborhood where people were still hurriedly preparing for the apocalypse. Uncle Tom was still stockpiling food. Aunt Lily was shopping fervently. The only constant was their smiles, which diminished day by day. Seeing this, Molly chatted with me. Do you know why they haven't been assimilated? They only survived the apocalypse for a few days. The survival of the fittest doesn't really apply to our lives. Fortunately, it's all over now. People will forever be happy. Molly and I exchanged a knowing smile. The apocalypse would never return. Later, on my birthday, the people in the neighborhood each gave me a gift. Having learned the value of life through the apocalypse, I knew the apocalypse would not return, but they didn't know that I wouldn't turn into a zombie in the future. They cared for me in their own way. It was unexpectedly heartwarming. As time drew closer, everyone occasionally couldn't control their emotions and would start sobbing. A year later, everyone closed their doors and windows, gazing out with solemn expressions, waiting for the apocalypse to arrive. As time passed, there were no zombies, no screams, and they all went online to find calm seas. Day by day, the tension built, first one day, then two, until 10 days had passed. Finally, someone couldn't bear it any longer. They flung open the door and ran outside, shouting into the open air. Shouts filled with hopes for the future and the despair of the past, from inside the house. Responses echoed, one after another, rising from soft to loud, from children to the elderly. Eventually, everyone was shouting while tears streamed down their faces, unable to put their emotions into words. In that moment, they finally believed that the end of the world was not going to come. The following night, the sound of fireworks was unceasing, accompanied by the beating of drums and the crackling of firecrackers. People sang and danced in jubilation everywhere. There were loud and wild noises. It was as lively as the New Year celebrations. A passerby casually asked why it was so lively. I replied, with 5G, the internet is so fast it feels like the New Year has come early. A passerby, 22, do you think they'll regret it, having made all those preparations and then the apocalypse didn't come? I chatted with Molly, why would they regret? Living a simple life is the greatest happiness. That's true, having survived what seemed like the end times before. As long as one could live safely, people cared less about material things. I never planned to recreate the apocalypse. I just wanted to know what a life without constant internal competition would look like. I know. She looked puzzled. I believe you. She nodded slightly, her eyes filled with mirth. The feeling of being trusted is truly wonderful, facing one's own desires, understanding what one truly wants, and then achieving happiness. Molly had quit her job a year ago, and since then, we had traveled everywhere, no longer haunted by the specter of 007. Speaking of which, when will Ancient Bell fulfill its wish? When will it return from outer space? I replied indifferently. The mental supernatural ability isn't very obvious in the early stage. You'll know about it later. In the 2 months, we kept hunting zombies, looking for crystal cores, and working out. Our supernatural abilities had a qualitative breakthrough. My supernatural ability broke through to the middle stage of the 3rd rank. Aaron's was in the later stage of the 2nd rank. Carter's was in the early stage of the 2nd rank. And Benjamin's was in the later stage of the 2nd rank at this time. I didn't tell them about the spiritual spring in the space. However, I mixed the water of the spiritual spring into the water and let them drink it. Otherwise, how could they break through so quickly? They were often shocked by the freshness of the ingredients, but they tacitly didn't ask anything. On National Day in the 3rd month of the apocalypse, I was so heartbroken that I took everything from the beautifully decorated apartment and left nothing behind. Then, I drove with them to City E. There would be rare second-rank and third-rank zombies, and the crystal cores in the zombies' brains had a very high purity. Most importantly, we would meet Aurora, a teammate with a healing supernatural ability from my previous life. In my previous life, she not only had a healing supernatural ability but also was a very powerful scientific researcher. The zombie vaccine she was researching had made preliminary breakthroughs. However, later, she accidentally touched zombie blood and turned into a zombie. We drove to a 5-star hotel in City E. There were densely packed zombies around the hotel. More than a dozen supernatural ability users were struggling to resist the zombies. There were too many zombies, and their numbers were gradually decreasing. Their supernatural abilities were almost exhausted, but the number of zombies didn't decrease much. Just when they thought they were about to die, a team walked towards them through the flames. For our team, cutting these ordinary zombies that hadn't evolved was like cutting Chinese cabbage. There were just too many of them, and it was very laborious to clean them up. It took a full 2 hours to finish. Thank you. If it weren't for you, we would have died, said the supernatural ability users who had just cleared the zombies as they bowed and thanked us. It's nothing. It's just a piece of cake. After entering the hotel, I saw not only Aurora but also Amelia. However, Wesley was no longer by her side. Instead, there was another man. Amelia was very surprised to see me, but there was more resentment in her eyes. When we entered, the atmosphere among the crowd became much more silent than before. Everyone had their own thoughts. But soon, Amelia broke the silence. Isabella, what a coincidence. I didn't expect to meet you here, she said, pretending to be surprised. She walked up to me with small steps and stretched out her hand to hug me. I sidestepped to avoid her. Get lost. What the hell is your attitude? Amelia's boyfriend frowned. She ran back to her boyfriend with a wronged expression and said in a coquettish voice, "It's okay, maybe my friend is in a bad mood and didn't mean to be mean to me. Who's your friend? I won't be friends with a bitch who steals someone else's boyfriend," I said. I didn't. Amelia replied with tears in her eyes, Right. Right, you're the most wrong person in the world, Aaron interjected. After this commotion, there were some voices, but it eventually turned into an argument. The content of the argument was that a group of people were morally pressuring one person, student Wang. Since you have a spatial supernatural ability and there's food in it, why can't you share it with us? Amelia said. We should help each other in the apocalypse. Yeah, a group of people shamelessly echoed Amelia's words. Aurora lowered her head and didn't interject. She thought that it was someone else's own thing. Why should they share it when they couldn't even eat enough themselves? But with so many people around, as a girl who didn't have the strength to protect herself, she didn't say anything. If you want to be a good person so much, find supplies and distribute them yourself, Carter said, frowning at their behavior. I don't have any supplies. If I did, I would definitely share them with everyone, Amelia said with tears in her eyes when someone refuted her. Amelia, don't you have a spatial ring? Why are you saying you don't have any supplies? I said. A group of people all looked at Amelia. Amelia's face turned red. We haven't met since the zombie outbreak. Don't slander me. Amelia panicked. She couldn't figure out how I knew about the spatial ring she exchanged from the system. Of course, I didn't know. I was just bluffing her. Seeing her expression, I was sure of my guess, after all. In my previous life, I had never seen her wear such a ring. It was very likely that she didn't get my spatial bracelet and exchanged for a spatial ring from the system. You told me so yourself, Amelia. Don't you remember? Amelia stared at me and warned, Isabella, stop talking nonsense. Do you have any evidence that I have a spatial ring? I raised my chin. Isn't that ring on your hand the spatial ring? Amelia's mind was racing, but she quickly calmed down. This ring was bound, and only she could open it. Then she raised her right hand confidently. This is just an ordinary ring. Seeing what Amelia was thinking, I explained, a spatial ring can't only be opened by its owner. A mental supernatural ability can also remove the inhibition on it. Amelia obviously didn't believe me. I said it's just an ordinary ring. Benjamin lifted the half-frame glasses on his nose with his fingertips and said, I'm a mental supernatural ability user. Let me try, and we'll know. Why should I give it to you? It's my thing, Amelia said weakly. Aaron dug her ears and was very impatient. Because you vowed that we should share the supplies, and you happen to have supplies in your ring. I don't have any supplies, Amelia said as she threw herself into her boyfriend's arms, looking very wronged. The man hesitated for a while and finally said heartlessly, why don't you give the ring to them to check? Even you don't believe me? Fine. Then I'll leave. Seeing them being affectionate and pulling each other, the red-haired man in the crowd couldn't stand it. He walked up to Amelia, grabbed the ring from her finger, and threw it to Benjamin. You can leave, but leave the ring behind. If you keep refusing to show the ring, what else could it mean but that you have a guilty conscience? With the red-haired man's interference, Amelia could only pray that the ring couldn't be opened, but contrary to her wish, Benjamin not only opened the ring but also poured out all the supplies in the space. Seeing the supplies piled up like a hill on the ground, the man pushed Amelia away with a disappointed expression. His heart was almost broken. He had risked his life to find supplies before, hoping that Amelia could eat and sleep well. He never expected that he had been a clown all along. 9. Amelia squatted on the ground and cried, but no one paid attention to her. The supplies piled up like a hill were quickly divided and eaten up. When Carter saw Amelia slipping away quietly, he was about to chase after her, but Benjamin grabbed the back of his neck. "Don't go." Carter hesitated for a while and said, "But, just listen to me." After saying that, Benjamin also rubbed Carter's fluffy hair. "Okay." Carter replied helplessly. Later, I invited Aurora to join our team. We formed a 5-person team. After searching for a long time, we finally found third-rank zombies. After killing the zombies, we found a villa to use as our base, but not long after, Amelia came with a large group of people. "Brother Lynn, it's her who bullied me, and she even made people take my spatial ring," Amelia said, looking wronged as she was hugged. "Just a bunch of losers. Do you think you can beat us?" Carter laughed loudly, not giving them any face. Then the coercion we exerted was at least in the later stage of the 2nd rank, and the highest was in the early stage of the 4th rank. Each rank was a watershed, and the gap was really huge. Amelia didn't have supernatural abilities, so she naturally didn't know our levels. She thought the people she brought could defeat us. Her system didn't know either because her system only had a task release panel and an integral mall exchange panel. The 3rd rank man in the lead was very sensible. He slapped Amelia and sent her flying to the ground. He clearly distinguished between his life and a woman. "You dare to deceive me. Brothers, retreat." Amelia quickly got up and chased after them. "Brother, don't leave me behind. Take me with you." Woo-woo. The men Amelia brought drove away, leaving Amelia to eat their exhaust. "Isabella, you forced me," she said. Getting angrier and angrier, she turned around and looked at us fiercely. The surrounding momentum kept rising, gradually climbing from the 1st rank to the later stage of the 5th rank. I thought she would attack me first, so I got into a fighting stance early. Unexpectedly, her wind blade attacked Aurora. We all didn't expect this. After all, she should hate me the most here, so we couldn't even help Aurora block the attack. Fortunately, after our training, Aurora wasn't as weak as before and managed to avoid the fatal blow. However, the wind blade cut through her arm, and the wound was so deep that blood gushed out. The members of our team were enraged by this action and launched an attack on Amelia. At first, we were at a disadvantage. After all, there was a big difference between the 3rd, 4th ranks and the 5th rank, but gradually, Amelia became more and more exhausted. After all, she had never used her supernatural ability. She had the strength of the 5th rank but didn't know how to use it. In the end, she was sent flying like a kite with a broken string. Then she spat out a mouthful of old blood with a wow. Carter used his wood-based supernatural ability to tie Amelia up tightly. I walked over and asked, "Why did you want Aurora to die?" Amelia spat out a mouthful of blood. "Bah, because she's a bitch and deserves to die." I took a hammer from the space and smashed her bones little by little. "I think you haven't figured out your position yet." "Ah, the space. It's the space. You've time-traveled too, right? It's my turn to ask questions. You're not qualified to ask me," I said and hammered again. Amelia let out screams. I'll talk, only if she dies. The vaccine against zombies won't be successfully developed, the zombies won't disappear, and my system won't disappear either." It was just as I guessed. In my previous life, Aurora's death wasn't an accident. It was all Amelia's doing. "Damn it," Aurora said angrily. She snatched the hammer from my hand and knocked Amelia unconscious with one hammer. She scratched her head awkwardly. "I didn't expect her to be so weak," she said. "Baby, let's go home. Stop making trouble. However, Captain, don't be angry. I'll heal her right away." 10. Amelia was awakened by the aroma of the hot pot. The boiling butter soup mixed with various vegetables and fresh meat gave off a strong fragrance, making her mouth water. Then she found that the injuries on her body didn't hurt anymore and were all healed. She tentatively said, "Isabella, have you forgiven me?" After eating and drinking to our fill, I put down my chopsticks, picked up the hammer on the ground, and smiled evilly. "I will never forgive you in my life." There were continuous sounds of Amelia begging for mercy in the villa. At first, she shouted loudly, but gradually her voice weakened until there was no sound. Aurora said, "Captain, you're so scary." Carter nodded in agreement. "I agree. What are you talking about?" I smiled. Carter quickly tried to change the subject. "It's nothing. Aurora, heal her in 7 days. Don't let her die so easily." I'll be very tired. Captain, I'll give you a 2nd-rank crystal core for each treatment." "Wow, suddenly I don't feel that tired anymore," Aurora replied with a smile. 11. 3 years later, Aurora developed a vaccine that could prevent people from turning into zombies after being scratched or bitten by zombies. She became a hot scientific research genius in the country. The vaccine was gradually promoted nationwide, and the world was slowly returning to order. Except for Aurora, our team all accepted military management and joined the National Special Guard. As for Amelia, after Aurora developed the vaccine and the system was separated from her, I personally ended her life. Story 2. Amid a global heatwave, my husband insisted on boosting his ex-girlfriend's sales by dragging the entire family into a 7-day desert tour. Unexpectedly, temperature soared above 80 degrees as soon as we landed, trapping everyone in the guest house without water or electricity for days. Desperate, I ventured out to find water for my son and husband but was locked out upon my return. Through the window, I saw my husband and his ex enjoying air conditioning and a lavish meal while my son mockingly waved an ice pop at me. "You fool, there's plenty of supplies inside. Every night after you fall asleep, Dad and Chloe feast," my son taunted. "Just die already, you're old and ugly and always bossing me around. I want Aunt Chloe as my new mom." I died of thirst and hunger at the doorstep of the guest house, filled with resentment. When I opened my eyes again, I had been reborn just days before the onset of the extreme heat. "Is this how you mother, always on business trips and overtime? Lucas has grown up without you. You should take him on vacation during his summer break, show him the world," they argued. Chloe's company is offering this luxurious 7-day desert tour. It's all-inclusive and reasonably priced at $100,000. I suddenly opened my eyes. The blisters from the high heat had vanished, and the burning pain seemed to linger in my throat, but the coolness beside me made me momentarily disoriented. Touching my smooth cheek, I wondered, wasn't I dead? In a strange desert city, I had braved temperatures of 70 to 80 degrees to find water for my family. When I returned, cracked lips and body blistered, I was locked out. Through the glass, my husband sat comfortably with his ex, provocatively smiling at me while my son affectionately called her mom Chloe. They looked like a real family, ignoring my desperate pleas outside, leaving me to die in the scorching heat. As I lay dying, my skin sizzled against the hot ground, my throat filled with blisters, and my heart overflowed with hatred. I had been blind to consider these beasts my family. If I had another chance, I would ensure these traitors suffered eternally. No. I grabbed the nearby phone. August 5th, 2024. I had been reborn 5 days before the catastrophic heat. My husband still held the brochure, his face blending with the memory of him locking me out. Seeing the brochure nearly touching my face ignited a fire within me. It was this tour that led to my previous demise. Manipulated by this freeloader, feeling guilty about my son, I had signed up without hesitation. As the departure neared, I discovered the private guide was his ex-girlfriend, and all this was just to boost her sales. With growing indignation, I slapped him hard. The sound was crisp and sharp. His face turned to one side, and he fell silent, staring at me in astonishment. After all, I had married him for his looks and tolerated his idleness at home for years, never speaking harshly or laying a hand on him before. The numbness in my palm made my rebirth feel all the more real. I spoke coldly. "If you're just a pretty face, then act like it. I've given you too much leeway over the years. You better understand your place. I'm not fit to be a mother. All these years, everything we've eaten, used, and the house we live in were earned by me alone. I hired help for cleaning and cooking, and I've been responsible for Lucas's everyday life and education. What have you ever done for this family? Sitting around, not earning a penny, and still acting all high and mighty. Who do you think you are? Relying on your sugar mommy to support you." My husband's face instantly turned the color of liver, his fingers clenching into a trembling fist, clearly stung by my words. He took several deep breaths to suppress his anger before speaking again, his voice cold and resentful. "Ella, you've gone too far. Just because you make some money, you forget who you are. I'm your husband." I stared at his face, scoffed coldly remembering his past deeds, and raised my hand to slap him again. His forehead vein popped, and his arm trembled slightly, clearly holding back his extreme frustration. As I was about to raise my hand again, he quickly grabbed my arm with such force it felt like it could shatter. "Ella, my patience has its limits. Don't force me to hit a woman." I gritted my teeth against the pain in my arm, stubbornly meeting his gaze. Despite experiencing betrayal in a past life, seeing only resentment and hatred in the eyes of the man I once loved deeply sent chills through my heart. The standoff was broken by our son's piercing scream as he rushed out and shoved me hard. Caught off guard, I slammed my back harshly against the edge of the table, gasping in pain. Our 6-year-old son, strong as a little bull, stood in front of his father, looking at me with disdain and anger. "How dare you hit Dad? He's the man of the house, the real man. If it weren't for Dad, no one would want an old and ugly woman like you even if you threw yourself at them. Dad, you should divorce this evil woman. I want Aunt Chloe to be my mom." The room fell silent instantly. My husband moved to cover our son's mouth, but he broke free, looking at me deliberately. He said, "Chloe is beautiful and kind. You're old and ugly and always nagging me. Why don't you just die?" My heart jolted, and a cold sweat broke out on my back. This was something my son had said in a past life too. It seemed he had harbored these thoughts for so long. My son, whom I had doted on and taught with all my heart, had always harbored such hatred for me. I had thought since he was the child I bore after 10 months of pregnancy, if possible, I still wanted to give him a chance to lead him back to the right path. But now, Seeing the hatred in his eyes, the last bit of softness in my heart dissolved. This child, like his father, was cold, arrogant, and cruel to the core. I looked coldly at the two of them, a plan forming in my mind. Heaven had given me a chance to start over, and I was determined to make them pay back everything they owed me and then let them descend into hell with nothing. Ella, don't listen to the nonsense of our son. Chloe is just my ex-girlfriend. There's nothing between us anymore. My husband stammered, trying to explain, but I stopped him with a raised hand. I composed myself and spoke calmly. I was too emotional just now. You make some sense. Lucas is growing up and indeed should see more of the world. My husband choked up, his expression a mix of confusion and wariness. Given my usual demeanor, he had expected an intense interrogation, not this sudden ceasefire. Pretending as if nothing had happened, I calmly took the travel brochure, followed the instructions to enter the official website, and quickly scanned the itinerary. This accommodation is too poor for a trip. If we're traveling, we should choose a higher class place. Only with good rest can we enjoy exploring. I patted my son's head and upgraded our accommodations to the most expensive presidential suite at a 5-star hotel, then confirmed the selection. If we're staying in the best available. Father and son exchanged looks, their faces unable to hide their surprise. I couldn't help but smile genuinely. In my past life, this hotel faced severe shortages. It ran out of water and electricity on the very day of the apocalypse. That must have been quite the first surprise for the father and son duo. However, when it came to paying, I hesitated for a long while. My husband urged me from the side, but I just tapped my head in frustration. I've recently invested all my funds into a new project at the company and can't withdraw them right now. Maybe you could cover it for now, dear. I had previously given him a considerable sum of money, worried he wouldn't manage well at home, and on top of that, buying him designer clothes and shoes every now and then, totaling several $100,000. He had more than enough to cover the travel group's expenses, but my husband's enthusiasm died down instantly, and he started to mumble excuses. Actually, Lucas is still very young. He won't remember anything from the trip. Maybe we should just not go. I sneered internally. In my past life, he had no problem using my money to help his ex-girlfriend meet her sales targets without batting an eye. But now when it was his turn, he started making all sorts of excuses. Lucas's excited little face immediately fell, and he began to throw a tantrum. I want to go. I want to go. It was the perfect moment for me to add fuel to the fire. As parents, aren't we earning money just to spend it on our children? Childhood is so fleeting. The words I had just spoken seemed to circle back and sting me, leaving my husband speechless. But even to maintain his image in our child's eyes, he reluctantly agreed to pay. The payment notification chimed. My husband's face looked worse than if he had swallowed a live fly. Since it was a privately customized tour, I didn't want these nuisances affecting my plans. I immediately called to confirm our departure for that evening. After hanging up, I dragged my husband and child to the supermarket under the guise of shopping for the trip, but in reality, I was preparing for a high-temperature apocalypse. Going against my usual thrifty nature, I bought almost everything I saw, regardless of the cost: change of clothes, towels, toilet paper, soap, shampoo, an inflatable pool, a waterbed, and camping gear in all sizes, enough to last for years, even a small drone. I didn't intend to let them take any of these items, but I had my husband pay for everything. With each swipe of the card, his face grew darker. I didn't really care about the money in his hands. Seeing him in pain was just slightly comforting to me. Moreover, I completely avoided the food and beverage section, telling them to save their appetites for the local delicacies. I didn't buy even a single pack of instant noodles or a bottle of water, but that still wasn't enough. On the way home, I casually brought up another topic. Honey, our villa is too far from the school, and it's only in my name. I'm thinking of getting a school district house and putting all three of our names on it this time. What do you think? My husband's eyes flickered, and he nodded almost without hesitation. I chuckled internally, knowing he had been eyeing the house for a long time, sweet-talking me into making it a joint property. I threw out the bait, and he took it immediately, worried that I might change my mind. He contacted a real estate agent on the spot, and we spent the remaining half-day looking at houses. I didn't approve any until we saw a top-floor, large apartment, to which I immediately agreed, this time, before I could even speak. My husband rushed to pay the down payment and asked the agent to help sell our villa. Wife, we'll move right after we get back from the trip. He was rubbing his hands eagerly, but I was just internalizing an estimate of the money he had left. After these three major expenses, his little treasury must be nearly depleted. Back home, I personally packed the luggage, keeping anything that might remotely help them during the apocalypse. Looking at the pile of essentially useless baggage, I smiled sincerely. In dire situations, it's best to start afresh. Based on my experience from my past life, they alone would embark on the journey. Sure enough, when we arrived at the airport that evening, an unexpected situation occurred. Don't cry yet. Chloe, what do you mean you booked the tickets wrong? Inside the airport, my husband was tenderly comforting Chloe, who was dressed lightly, her doe-like eyes brimming with tears. Jack. I just started work and am not familiar with the process yet. In my hurry, I accidentally didn't book a ticket for Ella, and now all the tickets for today are sold out. Chloe tugged at my husband's sleeve, looking frightened, her voice soft and weak, yet her gaze at me was full of provocation. What should we do, Jack? The plane is leaving in 10 minutes. My husband instinctively put his arm around her shoulders and patted her reassuringly. It's not a big deal. Ella isn't the type to hold grudges, and we all know it wasn't intentional. Then, turning to me, he spoke with finality. Ella, we'll go ahead with Chloe, and you can buy your own ticket and follow us later. I scoffed coldly, recalling a previous life where the same scenario unfolded. In that past life, I became upset upon learning that Chloe was the private guide for the trip. Her repeated provocations and deliberate omission of only my ticket enraged me, leading to a public altercation with her at the airport. Chloe and I were separated by airport security, and when asked, my husband unhesitatingly twisted the truth, claiming I had initiated the confrontation. I was taken away by the police, while the three of them happily boarded the plane on time. By the time I was released from the police station the next day, I was heartbroken but still worried about my husband and son, eventually buying my own ticket to follow them. That decision led to my demise in a foreign land. I mentally scorned my past self's naive love. Speaking again, my voice was calm and even. This is for the best. Lucas wants his Aunt Chloe, and since I don't have a ticket, you three go on the trip. Just then, my phone rang in my pocket. I answered the call as I walked out of the airport, not forgetting to wave goodbye to them. Have a good trip. My son looked dumbfounded, and my husband was completely stunned, instinctively trying to follow me but was stopped by Chloe. Jack, Ella is just upset for the moment. She'll come around. We need to board now. With a reluctant bite of his lip, he took Lucas and turned to board the plane. Meanwhile, I answered the call. It was from a real estate agent. Miss Ella, I've contacted the owner of the house you were interested in. They have settled abroad and are eager to sell their property here. It's for sale, not for rent, and I've sent you the contact details. Great, I replied, excitement stirring within me. In my previous life, I had considered buying that villa but decided against it due to its remote location, opting instead for a more expensive house in the city center. The suburban villa, nestled between mountains and sea, naturally maintained a cooler temperature. It had 3 floors above and below ground, and inexplicably, the original owner had drilled a natural well in the basement. In a high-temperature apocalypse, that would be an endless water source. Dying, I had longed for that villa, so upon my rebirth, I immediately contacted the agent, who quickly managed to get in touch with the owner. Containing my excitement, I remembered something else and spoke to the agent. Also, please help me sell the villa I'm currently living in these next few days. It can be sold below market price but must be a full cash payment, to prevent any unforeseen complications. I calculated the time difference. Although it was midnight back home, it was daytime in the owner's country. I immediately called the owner, and after some negotiation, they agreed to sell the house to me for $16 million. Without hesitation, I used all my savings, and for the shortfall, I took out loans from various platforms overnight, ensuring the money was transferred to the owner before dawn, the day after my rebirth. I received the property deed and the keys to my new villa with the help of a real estate agent. I excitedly toured the new villa, eventually stopping by the well. I bent down to scoop up some water and took a drink. The water was refreshingly cool and sweet. This was a happiness I couldn't achieve in my past life. Feeling emotional, I scooped up more water and splashed it on my face. Now was not the time to be upset. There was much to do. The priorities were a major shopping spree and reinforcing the house. I had secured loans from various platforms and, just in case, I even mortgaged the company I founded to borrow a significant amount of money. The villa was already fully furnished with bulletproof windows and doors. Given the extreme heat of the impending apocalypse, most people would be too drained to leave their homes, so I wasn't worried about security. The main plan was to stay underground, so I didn't bother with the decor of the 3 upper floors. I hired the most expensive local renovation team and paid extra to have the house renovated within 3 days. Solar panels were installed on the rooftop and all sun-exposed rooms on the upper 3 floors. The 3 underground levels were focused on insulation and waterproofing. The first and second floors had thermal insulation layers added to the floors and walls, along with numerous electrical outlets. The 3rd underground level was meticulously waterproofed multiple times, divided into a bathroom, toilet, and had its own drainage system. The renovation team was highly skilled, and within less than 2 days, the team leader proudly told me, "Miss, we've finished the renovations with the best materials available, complete with whole house surveillance. If there are any issues, just call us for repairs." I inspected everything and couldn't help but nod in satisfaction. Indeed, You get what you pay for. Their efficiency was truly high. While waiting for everything to dry, I didn't sit idle but drove straight to the electronics wholesale market. I bought 6 air conditioners, installing 2 on each level of the basement, 20 air cooler fans, and a total of 100 fans of various sizes and powers, 40 refrigerators and freezers, which could be used as makeshift air conditioning in case of a power outage, 5 large ice-making machines, 50 each of outdoor mobile power sources and high-capacity power banks, 5 pedal-powered generators, 2 sets each of solar and electric water heaters, 3 high-power, quiet generators, 10 battery banks, transformers, and stabilizers, various power strips, 10 each of the latest models of smartphones, computers, and tablets, which I had the clerk fill with novels, TV series, anime, and comics. Due to the large quantity of my purchases, the clerk even threw in some small appliances, ovens, air fryers, microwaves, rice cookers, soy milk makers, bread makers, yogurt makers, and sprout growers. I accepted all of them as listed. All of these items would be delivered and installed by professionals. Next were consumable items such as food, household supplies, and medicines. I then visited the food wholesale market. I showed the clerk a guide to stocking up for the apocalypse, which online friends had compiled. It was much more comprehensive than anything I could have thought of. In addition to staple foods like rice, flour, grains, and oils, vegetables, and various types of meat, there were even rice, millet, black rice, corn, red beans, soybeans, oatmeal, milk, various kinds of tea for brewing, lemon slices, black sesame paste, soy milk powder, and various canned fruits, frozen dumplings, buns, wontons, spring rolls, siumai, and glutinous rice balls, dried meat, dried fruit, potato chips, candies, jelly, cookies, bread, sausages, cheese, and beverages. Bagged pickled radishes, pickled cucumbers, and other small pickled vegetables, self-heating hot pots, rice, pizzas, and soups, bagged instant noodles, hot and sour noodles, and potato noodles, semi-finished products like egg tarts, Orleans grilled wings, chicken legs, chicken steaks, beef steaks, lamb chops, and chicken rolls, butter, chocolate, and other essentials, even included some chewing gum. I also prudently purchased 1,000 bottles of purified water in case the groundwater level drops later on. Then, I headed to the pharmacy. I bought 5 boxes each of fever reducers, cold medicines, painkillers, anti-inflammatory drugs, stomach medicines, and medications for various sudden illnesses, 10 boxes each of various vitamins and calcium supplements, 20 rolls of bandages, 250 bottles of medicinal alcohol, iodine tincture, and disinfectants, 200 boxes of waterproof band-aids and masks. Most importantly, I bought 100 boxes each of fever patches and heatstroke prevention medicine to have as backups. I also acquired some traditional Chinese herbs like chrysanthemum, honeysuckle, mint, dandelion, and nicetus root to clear heat and detoxify. Finally, I purchased an additional set of audible surveillance equipment and 3 safes, to be cautious. I hired a moving company from the neighboring city to transport these consumable items. After everything was arranged, I received a call from a broker telling me that someone was willing to buy my current villa for $20 million, which was lower than expected, but after some thought, I promptly agreed. We met, completed the payment, and transferred ownership in one go. Seeing the balance in my bank account brought me peace of mind. With this money, even if the apocalypse ends, I can pay off my debts and return to my former life. The items in the new villa were gradually put in place, and only 3 days had passed. I seized the opportunity to return to the original villa, sold all the furniture and decorations at low prices, returned the unworn clothes and shoes I had bought for my worthless husband and spoiled son, and donated everything else that had been used. In the end, the empty house was left with nothing but the full house surveillance and a kitchen knife intentionally hidden behind the kitchen door. I didn't leave even a grain of rice or a needle and thread. After double-checking everything, I locked the door with satisfaction. With 2 days left until the apocalypse, the temperature was already rising, and I wiped the sweat from my brow and took several big gulps from my water bottle. My phone rang in my pocket. It was my husband. "Ella, it's been 3 days. Why haven't you come over? This damned weather is getting hotter, and the 5-star hotel we're staying at just lost water and electricity. No telling when it'll be back. Lucas is crying from the heat." My husband went on, hoping to hear my explanations and concern. In my previous life, if I had heard that he and our beloved son were suffering so much, I would have been heartbroken and helpless, perhaps even flying over to suffer along with them, or doing everything possible to help them out of their predicament. But the Ella who always thought of them first in her previous life is gone. So I responded indifferently. "It's a desert city. Heat is normal. It might cool down by evening. Tough it out. You're both grown men. If you have problems during your trip, talk to your tour guide. I'm not a travel agency. Why bother me?" My husband, who had never been talked back to like this, changed his tone in frustration. "Is this never going to end, Ella? I already said what happened at the airport was an accident. You're still acting petty and sulky, thinking you're a little princess. If you know what's good for you, buy some food that Lucas and I like and come over quickly. I might still forgive and forget, perhaps thinking that he had already secured the house. He didn't bother pretending anymore and even blatantly showed his true colors. You nag all the time. You're nothing compared to Chloe's gentle nature. Anyway, I paid the down payment for the new house, so it will only be in my name, unless you kneel and apologize. We are getting a divorce when we return. I was busy organizing and placing items in the new villa, his endless nagging going in one ear and out the other. I casually replied, "Fine, I agree to the divorce." There was a second of silence from him, then he exploded in anger. "Ella, say that again." I immediately hung up. He persistently called back, but I decided to block and delete all contact information of him and my son. By then, the sun had already set. Despite the villa being quite hot, I glanced at the thermometer hanging on the wall. 45 degrees, only one more day to go. The onset of the extreme heat was already taking shape. After being busy nonstop for so many days, I was surprisingly not sleepy at all, and took a tour around my domain, checking each floor. The third floor upstairs was covered with glaring solar panels. The air conditioning on the 3 floors below was already in operation. The first basement level was neatly stocked with shelves of instant noodles, cereal, bottled water, self-heating hot pots, chips, and other room temperature foods, along with essentials like toilet paper, towels, and spare clothes. The second basement level housed various fridges and freezers, with fresh vegetables and fruits in the chillers, and different kinds of meats and a variety of ice creams and popsicles in the freezers, mainly powered by the solar panels. Just in case, several large portable power sources for camping were also stored around. Butter, chocolate, and various sauces, which fear high temperatures, were also kept on this level. Then there was the most crucial, the third basement level, which would become my most frequented spot. The bathrooms and showers with independent drainage were all set up. I had also purchased a water pump in advance and placed it in the well to ensure water availability in case of a cutoff. Finally, while water and electricity were still running normally, I inflated the swimming pool and water bed my husband had bought before, filling them with air and water. I also prudently topped up the villa's utility cards with thousands of dollars. After a final contented inspection, I felt everything was in order. I stepped out for a delightful hot pot meal, then bought several boxes of different flavored ice cream pops and a few large watermelons, squeezing them into the freezer wherever there was space. After everything was arranged, I locked the doors and windows and went down to sleep on the water bed in the third basement level, sleeping deeply. I was woken up by the ring of a phone call from an unknown number. I glanced at the clock on the wall. It was already 7 p.m. the next day, and the temperature upstairs had soared to 55 degrees. Only 5 hours left until the extreme heat apocalypse. After quickly washing my face, I answered the call. The voice on the other end immediately snapped me to attention. "Ella, did you sell our villa? Where are you?" They had actually returned before the apocalypse. I instinctively hung up the phone and hurriedly turned on the original villa's surveillance. My husband, son, and Chloe were standing in the living room, sweating profusely and discussing something. I turned on the surveillance audio. "Jack, how could sister just sell the house without saying a word when she's upset? There's not even an air conditioner here, and Lucas is about to get heat stroke. She's being too irresponsible as a mother." My son was indeed suffering from the heat. Slumping against the wall, no longer his usual arrogant self, my husband wiped his sweat and tried to turn on the kitchen faucet. Water gushed out. All three perked up, scooping water with their hands and gulping it down, even pouring some over their heads. I pounded my leg in regret. A misstep. I had forgotten to cut off the water supply to the old villa, inadvertently giving them a break. I watched as they quenched their thirst and sat back down. "Dad, where did Mom go? I'm hungry. I want to eat the little wontons Mom makes." Lucas spoke listlessly. He wasn't close to Aunt Chloe anymore, pushing her away when she tried to comfort him, even directing his anger at her. "It's all your fault. If you hadn't failed to book Mom's ticket, she wouldn't have gotten mad. I should be sitting in air conditioning eating watermelon right now. It's all your fault, you wretch. Why don't you just die?" Watching this, I couldn't help but laugh. My son's harsh words spared no one. Solely based on who was useful to him. But speaking of little wontons, I felt a bit hungry too. I got up, turned on the camping gas stove to boil some water, and went down to the second basement to fetch a box of previously prepared frozen wontons. Dropping them into the boiling water, stirring occasionally, she continued to watch the drama unfold. Chloe awkwardly withdrew her hand and resumed her efforts to stoke her husband's anger. "Yes, Jack, it's so hot today, it could be deadly. How could Ella just leave you here like this? Your family after all." Her husband repeatedly called me with a gloomy face, but without exception, I hung up each time. His gaze grew colder and colder. Eventually, he stopped trying to contact me and instead opened an unfamiliar app on his phone, where a little red dot was highlighted on the map. "It's okay, I had installed a tracking app on her phone. Bitch isn't answering my calls. Huh. Good, she'd better hope I don't find her. A chill ran up my spine, sending shivers through me. In 4 hours, a severe heat apocalypse would arrive, bringing with it a massive storm. The steaming heat from the ground mixed with moisture would make breathing difficult, and the temperature would instantly soar to a terrifying 80 degrees. If I could just hold out until then, I would be safe. The dumplings were ready, plump and round, floating to the surface. I served them in a bowl, adding shrimp skins, kelp, and sesame oil, and took a delightful sip of the soup that was so delicious it made my tongue tangle. After a moment's consideration, I took the initiative to call my husband while eating. Jack, calm down, let's talk. But the person on the other end had clearly lost his senses due to the heat and the fact that I wanted to abandon them. He refused to communicate and just stared red-eyed towards the direction of the monitor. Taking a few steps closer, he showed me the small red dot on his phone that marked my location, his lips twisting into a cruel, mad smile. So, you really want me dead? Want to guess who will end up killing whom? Ella. I'm coming to find you now. I tried to calm him down with my words. But to no avail. This time, he hung up the phone himself. He wet all the clothes in the suitcase and draped them over their heads. Turning, he saw a kitchen knife behind the kitchen door, grabbed it without hesitation, and even took a heavy steel pipe in his hand. Then he headed straight towards my location on the map. Before leaving, Chloe didn't forget to smirk provocatively at me. Sister Ella, we're coming to find you. I casually curled the corner of my mouth, turned, and picked up a watermelon soaked in the well, slicing it open and scooping out a big spoonful. The juice was rich and sweet, refreshingly cool, and I squinted in comfort. Dark clouds filled the sky outside, with occasional distant thunder. With no vehicles on the road, the three of them had to walk. When I saw them again on the monitor, it was over 3 hours later. By then, all three were panting heavily, especially Jack, who was carrying the steel pipe. His eyes filled with almost tangible murderous intent. By now, I had eaten and drunk my fill, and even watched 2 episodes of a series while enjoying an ice pop. The elevator was still operating. When they reached the villa's front door, they started banging loudly. Ella, come out and open the door, Jack demanded. Lucas and Chloe, following behind him, were completely frightened by his crazed demeanor, hearing no response. Jack grew more agitated and began smashing the door forcefully with the steel pipe, blow after blow. After about 15 minutes, the door began to dent. I dropped the empty ice cream box, turned on the monitor, and yelled anxiously, "Stop smashing, stop, I'll tell you the password." Finally, Jack stopped. I watched the clock, starting to stall, haggle, and negotiate with them. With just 1 minute left, perhaps seeing victory in sight, I truly faltered. Thinking of quickly getting inside to enjoy the air conditioning, they repeatedly assured me that they wouldn't harm me and readily agreed to all the conditions I proposed. Eventually, I gave in and told them the password. With a click, the door lock opened, yet Jack suddenly erupted, his face contorted with rage as he swung a kitchen knife towards where he anticipated I might be standing behind the door. Die, bitch. As the rain poured down outside, the knife clattered to the ground. Jack, stunned, stared at the empty luxury apartment. On the dusty living room floor lay my old cell phone. The three of them stood frozen, bewildered, while I, watching from the surveillance end, couldn't help but burst into laughter. Having lived another life, I was naturally extremely cautious. They had merely moved from one empty house to another, even more inhospitable. With the arrival of the high-temperature apocalypse, the scoundrels and vile women were also in place. My game was finally about to begin. Jack and the others were now in the penthouse that we had agreed to purchase before our trip. Just outside the door, a ladder led up to the rooftop terrace. After paying the deposit, the agent had given us the keys and the utilities details. During the renovations, I had the place soundproofed and installed full house surveillance. There were no food supplies inside, and their phones had overheated and shut down during their journey here. The temperature had risen to a point where they couldn't venture out again. The rooftop was already hot, and now whether these three survived depended on whether I was willing to recharge their electricity and throw them some food. Realizing the situation, Jack began cursing loudly, calling me heartless and vowing to find and kill me. I picked up a big bag of cucumber-flavored chips and listened with relish as I ate, but soon, he ran out of energy, with the temperature nearing 80 degrees. The top floor without water or electricity made breathing feel like sparking flames. Not turning on the air conditioning was literally a matter of life and death, so he wisely stopped cursing, adopting a pleading tone in hopes of invoking my mercy. Ella, after all these years together, you can't do this to me. Weren't you the one who loved me the most? We have a child together. You love him more than anything, don't you? Look at him. Look at our Lucas. Seeing his facile and ugly pleading made me lose my appetite. Wiping the crumbs off my hands, I turned on the surveillance microphone again. Tell me a few things I don't know, and if I'm pleased, maybe I'll add some credit to your electricity. The three on the floor perked up, then looked uneasy. Chloe was the first to break. Starting off, your plane ticket at the airport was intentionally left unbooked by me. I wanted to see you humiliated in public and then enjoy a getaway with Jack. I scoffed lightly. I knew that. Not just me, Jack was also well aware. Chloe smiled awkwardly, then Lucas spoke, his lips trembling. Mom, that big deal you were working on, Dad intentionally sabotaged it. He said he couldn't stand seeing you so arrogant, told me to disrupt the meeting and publicly call you a whore, a mistress to many. He thought if your reputation was ruined, he could further kick you while you were down. And then you'd be more compliant in giving us money. His words were cut off by a slap from Jack. Jack's face turned red as he glared at him, signaling him to shut up, but I simply continued. I knew that too. The father and son were stunned, their mouths opening and closing, but soon, they didn't have the luxury to argue back. As the temperature continued to rise, Jack, gasping for breath, finally snapped at the camera. I've been sleeping with Chloe for a long time. I originally planned to ditch both you and your mom on this trip and elope with her. Lucas's eyes widened in shock, unable to believe what he was hearing. Jack, however, didn't even glance his way, his attention fixed solely on the monitor. So that's how it is. This is the first time I'm hearing about it. I nodded in understanding, generously topping up $10 for their electricity and thoughtfully turning on the air conditioner. The temperature in the room finally began to drop. But an eerie silence fell among the three of them. Their son, Lucas, was the first to break the silence aggressively. Dad, was what you just said true? Weren't you two supposed to take me with you? Was it all a lie? Both the unfaithful man and woman averted their gazes, pretending not to hear his accusation, leaving Lucas to rant and rave in frustration. Used to getting his way, Lucas couldn't handle being ignored and started to lash out. He struck at Jack and was quickly knocked to the floor by a few sharp slaps. Then he turned his anger towards Chloe. It's all your fault. You must have seduced Dad. Despite his small stature, he was surprisingly strong, grabbing Chloe's hair and not letting go, causing her to scream in pain and desperately seek Jack's help. Jack, unwilling to see his lover in distress, slapped Lucas several more times. This time, Lucas's stubborn side kicked in, and he bit into Jack's hand, refusing to let go. The three of them were caught up in a heated brawl. Meanwhile, I was in a great mood, preparing a curry omelet rice dish. I poured the beaten eggs into the pan, letting them partially set before rolling them into a bundle, frying them until golden and crispy on the outside but still slightly runny inside. I laid this over glistening white rice, drizzled curry sauce over it, and gently cut it open, the runny egg mixed with the curry sauce, covering the rice with a delicious aroma. In my past life, they had tricked me and left me outside for 2 full days without a bite of food or a sip of water. Driven by hunger, I had to resort to peeling bark and nibbling on tree leaves to get a bit of moisture. Now, with the temperature in this underground level not even reaching 30 degrees, I could cook near an open flame without breaking a sweat. I even grabbed a can of cold cola, relishing my meal amidst their chaotic cries of pain, and even had time for a bath and a short nap after resting enough. I once again turned on the surveillance monitor. The temperature had barely dropped, and they finally realized another problem: supplies. The room was empty. I had made sure there was no food or water left. All three were bruised and battered, and now they reunited to check inside and out before returning to the monitor. Pitifully begging, I spoke calmly. I've prepared some supplies for you. They're on the rooftop, in 3 boxes, each secured with a 4-digit code. First, the code for the first box, I said, my gaze hardening. Jack, we once had another child. It was winter back then. I was on a business trip in a northern city when Chloe and Lucas suddenly came to see me, saying Lucas wanted to go skiing. I was nearly 3 months pregnant at the time and had planned to surprise my husband upon returning, so I hadn't told anyone yet. However, Chloe found out and persuaded Lucas to push me down the ski slope. I lay in the snow, blood flowing freely beneath me. They left me to freeze for nearly an hour, ensuring the child was lost before calling for emergency help. From then on, not only did I lose my child, but I also developed a condition where my joints would ache unbearably whenever I got cold. Chloe wanted me to keep it a secret for the sake of the child. Looking at Lucas, who had pushed me, I chose to swallow all the bitter consequences alone. Now, bringing up the past, the faces of Lucas and Chloe turned sour. Jack exploded with rage. He grabbed Lucas fiercely, roaring, "What the hell is going on?" Lucas' eyes darted around as he stuttered, "And Chloe said that if you had a new child, you wouldn't love me anymore. I'd be left to starve and sleep on the streets. She also told me that pregnant women are sensitive to cold and sudden impacts, and if I pushed Mom down the snowy slopes, no one would compete with me for attention." Jack, his eyes bloodshot, kicked his son towards the wall. He then turned his cold gaze towards Chloe, trembling. Chloe tried to run, but Jack grabbed her by the hair and pulled her back. She screamed like a pig being slaughtered, and as a fist was about to strike her, she cried out while clutching her stomach, "Don't hit me. I'm also carrying your child." At this revelation, Jack instantly calmed down. He looked at Chloe's stomach, chuckled twice in surprise, and carefully helped her sit down. I was stunned. But more than that, I felt a deep chill. In my past life, how blind was I to have chosen such a man as my husband, even caring for him at the cost of my own life? The despicable man and the vile woman quickly smoothed things over and started to discuss the timing of my miscarriage. On December 25th, during the bustling Christmas celebrations abroad, my child silently left this world. There was no sign of sorrow for the lost child on the man's face. Once they had figured out a plan, he eagerly headed towards the rooftop. Halfway there, he stopped, turned back, and dragged Lucas, who was clutching his stomach and gasping for air. He pointed a kitchen knife at his once beloved son. "It's too hot outside. Go and bring the supplies down." Lucas, incredulous and cursing under his breath, cowered when Jack drew the knife and reluctantly left. Outside, a heavy rain was falling, and Jack watched as Lucas climbed the ladder to the rooftop. It took a long time before he returned with just 2 bottles of water and 2 small loaves of bread. Jack slapped him on the head. "You little beast, did you eat some of the supplies? Why so little? Soaked through?" Lucas gasped and held his face, defending himself. "I checked. There were only these in the first box, and the boxes were welded to the ground. I couldn't move them." Jack snatched the food away, cursing. That evening, he and Chloe each had a bottle of water and a loaf of bread, while Lucas could only shiver wetly in a corner, with nothing. Watching this fatherly love from behind a screen, I couldn't help but laugh out loud, tears nearly falling. Lucas had once betrayed me, choosing his father over me, and now it was his father who disregarded his life. I felt no pity. I went to cut a plate of fruit, enjoyed it on my cool waterbed while watching a show, and contentedly went to sleep. The next day, I checked the surveillance again. Lucas' cheeks were red, and he occasionally coughed, probably having caught a cold from the rain and wind. After yesterday's revelations, they had completely turned on Lucas. Not only did they make him massage their backs and legs, but they also pushed him to a corner far from the air conditioner. However, I hadn't paid much for electricity, and the air conditioning soon stopped, forcing them once again under the surveillance. This time, their mutual revelations were much more practiced. Chloe spoke first, pursing her lips. "In fact, every time I reported the cost of our trips to Jack, I inflated the price 2 to 3 times. I've already saved enough for a house with the money I scammed from you," I coldly said. "I know." Then Lucas, his voice choked with emotion. "I actually knew early on that Dad and Chloe were together. I covered for them during their previous trips." He looked at the surveillance, his eyes red. "Mom, I was wrong. They were deceiving me before. Now I know only you truly care about me. Mom, I don't want to stay here anymore. Can you take me away?" He sobbed uncontrollably, but I remained unmoved, speaking calmly. "Jack, it's your turn." He resignedly closed his eyes, mumbling a few indistinct words, but I heard him clearly. He said, "Ella, I bought you an expensive personal accident insurance policy years ago." My body trembled slightly, and I was nearly at a loss for words. All the previous details suddenly linked together in my mind. Jack abruptly stood up. 0813 Ella. The second group's password is 0813, right? I exhaled softly, my long-held suspicions finally resolved. Indeed, how could a villain forget the evil deeds they deliberately committed? 2 years ago, on August 13th, we went camping by a creek, and halfway there, we encountered Chloe. I waded into the creek to catch some small fish for my son. As I bent over, Chloe suddenly emerged and pushed my head underwater. Caught off guard, I choked on water, desperately struggling, but no match for Chloe's brute strength. When my consciousness began to blur, I vaguely saw Jack walking over with Lucas. Thinking I was saved, I reached up to them, but they just coldly stood by, not coming forward. It wasn't until another camper happened by that Chloe, fearing discovery, hastily let go, and I finally surfaced. Afterward, Chloe insisted she was just joking, and Jack claimed I had been mistaken, that he hadn't been near the creek at all. So, they had bought insurance on me a long time ago. They indeed intended to drown me that day, a plan my own husband had orchestrated, while my own son just coldly observed. Touching my cheeks, I realized they were already wet with tears. Those who betray sincerity deserve severe punishment. They had it coming. I wiped my tears. Yet I still topped up their electricity bill by $10 more. It wasn't time yet. I still had to endure, growing impatient for my reply. Jack lost his patience. He kicked Lucas, sending him to the rooftop to fetch supplies. By then, the torrential rain had stopped, the sun was blinding, and the temperature soared to 85 degrees. Lucas took even longer than before to come down from the rooftop, almost completely dehydrated. We managed to open the second box, which contained only a bottle of water and a bag of small bread. Jack, as usual, snatched them immediately, his expression somewhat unpleasant. He stood at the door, consuming the water and bread without leaving a bite for the others. Chloe and Lucas were angry but dared not speak. At night, as usual, Lucas was forced to sleep in the corner farthest from the air conditioner. With such scant supplies, Jack and Chloe were already plotting to raid other apartments or, if necessary, target Lucas. Lucas hung his head as if unaware, but he clutched a small piece of paper tightly in his hand. I had left it in the second box, with only one sentence written on it. There's a bottle of bleach and a bottle of toilet cleaner in the toilet tank. Mixing them will produce toxic gas. Use in a sealed space can be lethal. Seeing Lucas's trembling body, I knew he was tempted. Sure enough, that night, after the two were asleep, Lucas stole a kitchen knife and a steel pipe, decisively mixing the two liquids in a basin and pushing it into the bedroom, then locking the door. Jack and Chloe had gone to sleep in the bedroom, where the air conditioning was stronger. In the completely sealed room, by the time they realized what was happening, it was too late. They had already inhaled a significant amount of the gas. Chloe, frail and weak, couldn't move at all. Desperate, she grabbed Jack's hand, begging him to save her, but he coldly shoved her away, poisoned in his bed. Jack could barely move, but he mustered his last bit of strength to kick open the door. Before he could catch his breath, Lucas, who was waiting at the door, struck his head with a cleaver. In pain, Jack clutched his head, trying to run outside, but Lucas mercilessly chased after him, slashing continuously. Ultimately, Jack didn't make it out the front door. Lucas hacked him to death right by it. I watched the tragedy unfold silently through the screen. These people had repeatedly attempted to take my life. No. As they turned on each other like dogs. Their fate was of their own making, and their deaths were of no consequence. I felt neither sorrow for them nor any sense of satisfaction. Once it was clear both were dead, Lucas dropped the cleaver, gasping heavily as he looked towards the direction of the surveillance camera, his eyes filled with sorrow. "Mom, I now understand why you did all this. I remember everything from my past life." Lucas suddenly recalled the memories of his previous life at this moment, but that was just as well. He should understand that I will never forgive them. Lucas tipped down the surveillance camera and walked towards the roof door. "Last time, when you went out to find water and food for Dad and me, we locked you out of the house, but you didn't die right away, in revenge for your previous strictness towards me." Later, he closed his eyes, seemingly unwilling to remember or speak further, so I continued for him. "Later, you used the drone I gave you, dangling water and food, to lure me onto the rooftop of the guest house. You teased me, making me kneel, strip, and crawl around barking like a dog, but after I complied, you poured out the water and threw the food into the outdoor latrine. You watched as I slowly dehydrated to death on the rooftop, naked. Even as the drone's battery exploded, I could still hear you and two others clapping and mocking inside the house." Lucas's lips trembled, his body bending more with each word I spoke. The rooftop before him overlapped with the platform from his previous life. He bent over, trembling so much he could hardly stand. "I'm sorry." His voice was so hoarse it was almost inaudible. I spoke faintly. "So, the code for the third box is the date of my death in my past life. Don't you want to see what's inside?" Trembling, he walked over and opened the box. Inside was a drone, identical to the one from his past life. He looked away as if burned, then forced himself to look back. Squatting down to hold the drone in his arms, "Mom, you will never forgive me. I deserve everything that's happening now," he murmured to himself. My gaze was icy. Indeed, how could I possibly forgive? Lucas glanced at the drone, then at his hands covered in blood, seeming to lose his sanity, mumbling incoherently. Finally, he took a few running steps and jumped off the rooftop. The surveillance camera and drone battery exploded together, and the screen went black. The last bit of resentment in my heart finally dissipated, and I exhaled deeply. I touched the corner of my eye. There were no tears. Of course, I had cried all my tears in my past life. Afterward, I continued living normally in the basement, maintaining a regular routine, improving my cooking skills, and avidly reading to better myself. Having been given a second chance at life, I finally began learning how to love myself. A year later, the high-temperature apocalypse finally ended. With sufficient resources, my life was unaffected. The disaster killed countless people, and by the time order was restored and reconstruction began, the three evildoers were nothing but bones, leaving no evidence behind. I used the money I had to pay off all debts and actively participated in post-disaster reconstruction. I sold the large apartment at an unexpectedly stable price. With sufficient money and a better version of myself, I was set for a bright future.